Hello and welcome to my channel, You Are the One, where we talk all things law of assumption to help make your manifesting journey easier and more fun. And today we are talking about how to change a diagnosis using the amazing teachings of the law of assumption. So stick around. My name is Hedley Derenzie. I am a qualified life coach and author specializing in the law of assumption. If you'd like to know more about me or my offerings, including coaching and my free self-concept course, Set Yourself Up with the Ultimate Self-Concept course, you'll find all of those details in the box below this video or at my website, youaretheone.com.au. But we are just going to get straight into today's topic, which is how to change a diagnosis, meaning a health diagnosis. And the reason that I've been wanting to do this video for a while, because I just, around about here and there, I just hear people talk about the labels or the conditions that they've been diagnosed with or that their children have been diagnosed with. And in my mind, I'm like, oh no, that's not where the story ends. Don't let the story end there. That's the beginning of the opportunity to change the story and create a new adventure and to awaken from the story. And of course, I think that with no judgment of all. We're all in this together. We're all awakening together. But when I do hear that, I'm like, oh my God, here's this perfect opportunity to experience this amazing power that we have. And we're not using it in our favor. We're using it to reinforce a story that is not what we want to experience. One of the common diagnoses that I hear is ADHD, and they'll tell you, I have ADHD, and then they'll tell you everything about ADHD. Now, I don't want to discount anyone's experience. This is not about that. But a diagnosis is not the end of the story. It's not about getting the diagnosis and then going, okay, now I've got to live with this and figure out how I manage this and then create this whole new story that I have to tell everybody about how this is who I am now. This is just the story that I'm going to go out into the world and tell everyone with. And every time we tell the story, we reinforce it. Nothing wrong with telling the story, by the way. We all have to acknowledge what it is that we are facing in our reality. But then it's good to know that we can actually change the story. And of course, that is what this game of awakening is all about, and that's what the law of assumption, originally taught by the wonderful, great American mystic Neville left us with his beautiful legacy with these teachings that we can now use in order to change the stories, change the assumptions that we are holding in subconscious that are getting pushed out and reflected back in our reality. Remember, consciousness is the one and only reality. Reality is the reflection of consciousness. That phrase that we've all heard at some point, I and my Father are one, but my Father is greater. It simply means my consciousness and my reality are one. But my consciousness is greater because that's what is the cause of reality. That's what's causing reality. So it's not that we're discounting reality, definitely not. Our reality is helping us to figure out what is going on in consciousness and where we need to direct our attention. And when it comes to these diagnoses, this is the opportunity. This is the beginning of the new story. If you know about this and if you want to change the story, maybe you don't. Maybe you want to have ADHD or whatever other condition you've been diagnosed with. But I would be taking that as the beginning of the new story rather than the ending. So that diagnosis is important. We don't want to deny anything. This is not about denying reality. We want to acknowledge what comes at us, what our reality is presenting to us, what we are receiving from reality. Let's say in this case, it's a diagnosis of some sort. I'm just going to use this example of ADHD because that seems to be a common one that I hear a lot. I hear people say, I have ADHD or my kid has ADHD. Let's just own the diagnosis in reality and then go, okay, cool. Here's the diagnosis. This is what the current story is. Now, how would I like this story to be? So then I'm going to create a new assumption and I'm going to create a new vision that I am present and I have all of my attention, and whatever the opposite of attention deficit disorder is, I have attention presence order. I'm literally making this up on the spot. Can you tell? Whatever you are focusing on is what you are going to get more of, is what expands. So if you're focusing on the diagnosis, if you're telling the story of the diagnosis, you are going to expand the experience of the diagnosis in your reality. So what we want to do when we get a diagnosis is be very honest and real and looking, really front up to that and acknowledge that diagnosis. Again, as I say, and I will continue to repeat, we are not in the business of denying reality. We want to look at our reality because reality is the reflection of what's going on in subconscious. So there's obviously something going on in subconscious that created this diagnosis that requires our attention. And so once it has our attention, then we can go, okay, great. So there's an assumption that created this disorder. So then I'm going to focus on creating order in that area of my life, or in that particular story. So then what you want to do is you want to actually create a term that is opposite to the name of the disorder, so that you have something to direct your focus towards. So let's say you have a diagnosis of heart failure. That's a very real diagnosis. We need to acknowledge that and deal with that in the 3D. But while we're doing that, while we're working on that in the 3D, then you want to create like a version or a story of what you want to experience, which is heart success. So you would then create a name that is opposite to the disorder that you've been diagnosed with, and then continue to focus your awareness to that. Now, what does heart success look like? It's going to look a lot different to the story of the heart failure. And that gives your heart something to work towards, as in that gives your awareness something to focus on rather than the heart failure. If you don't give your brain something else to focus on, it's going to go to the dominant story. So it's going to go to the diagnosis. It's really important that you change the name of the diagnosis to what you want to experience in the new version of you that you are now going to be creating with your imagination. Because remember, a diagnosis is not the end of the story. A diagnosis is the beginning of the new story. It is what you've been given to help you awaken to you being God in human form. If you didn't have anything to awaken from, you can't know that you're God in human form. So the diagnosis is a perfect setup for you to have the experience of remembering that you are God in human form and having something to awaken from and overcome. And then once you've reached that new version of yourself where you are now in alignment with your successful heart, you're going to know that you're God in human form, and then you're going to continue to expand your experience here in the 3D, and suddenly everything that was impossible now becomes possible. The diagnosis is the setup. That's the beginning of the new story. That's the beginning of the opportunity. That's the seed from which you can awaken. So look, that's just a quick video to let you know that your diagnosis of any health issue is not the end of the story. You do not have to stay in that state. It's like a diagnosis is a state of consciousness that got outpictured and reflected back in your reality. Yes, it is serious. Yes, you want to deal with it at the 3D level. Yes, you want to seek help and get the experts to do whatever you need to do to treat it at the 3D. But while you're doing that, you are working in consciousness. You are using the power of your imagination to create the new story, to create the new version. The diagnosis is part of the setup. And we are giving ourselves all sorts of different setups in this life. Like, we all have different setups, but they are all helping us awaken to our true nature, which is consciousness and God and imagination in human form. Otherwise, if we're all just walking around as gods knowing that we are, and we come into this world knowing that we are, it's just like, oh yeah, hi. It's like, there's no adventure. We had to set up the adventure, and a diagnosis is just one adventure. And that just happens to be your adventure at this particular point in time. But you are not bound to that. You are not bound to that reality. In every diagnosis of illness is the opportunity for health. Please remember that you are the amazing creators of your reality. You are the superstar of your show. You are the producer, the writer, the director, and the actor in your movie. What you assume to be true will be so. So assume the best for you. Assume the best for everyone in your movie too, and you will have an amazing life. And this is my wish, my vision, and my prayer for you. Thank you so much for listening. I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye.